You've seen it before. That pit in the bottom of your stomach might break out in cold sweat the moment that your brain clicks in with an explosive, "I'm lost." If I dropped you off right here with nothing but a paper map, could you tell me which way to go? Most people think the answer is yes. The reality is, they can't. And it's usually because they ignore these three parts of every map to assist with terrain identification and directional travel. Stick around. We're going to cover some interesting topics today. All right, start with today. We're going to look at the grid system on maps. Let me ask you a question. If you're looking at a map and you did not know how to describe on the map where Emerald Lake happened to be, I'm going to show you where it is. It's actually right here. Emerald Lake was. How would you tell your cousin to meet you there? Well, there's an easy way on a map. Most maps, if not all maps, have some form of a grid system. Some of them are easy, such as I've laid out here. This is an AI-generated, just simplistic one to show you kind of some obvious ways to look at it. And then, of course, other maps are utilizing latitude and longitude. But in the end, they all work the same. All right, so if I'm looking at Emerald Lake, which is right here, we just saw it. I'm going to look up at my column section, which is up here in the side area, right up here. Okay, this is the column on the x-axis. X-axis runs this way. Okay, so on the x-axis, where does Emerald Lake fall? It falls, okay, in column 7. Okay, now I'm looking at row. Row is on the y-axis. Y-axis runs up and down here. And, of course, it's A through N, where the top one is the X is 1 through 14. Anyway, I'm taking a look at Emerald Lake. I know I'm at 7, so then I look over here at my row section, and I'm at row number H, row H. So if I take a look real fast, I go row H over to Emerald, column 7. Okay, oh, wait a minute. I am in, you guessed it, I am in grid H7. And I'm able to tell somebody, looking at a map, hey, I'm over here in H7. Emerald Lake's at H7. Now, part of it does fall in I7, so you could say, well, Emerald Lake falls between H and I7 in that line, and you would not be incorrect. I hope that makes sense and kind of clears up the grid system on a map. Again. All right, so here we go. I'm going to go over one last component of the grid system so that it's clear. This is a different map. This is the Atlas map. Okay, I wanted you guys to see it in real time, what it looks like in a real map. Okay, so you're going to use this as a place to help somebody understand on a map where to look. And so I brought up Lake Tahoe, kind of the insert right here. Okay, so I want to show you across the top, same grid system on the x-axis, 1, 2, 3, all the way over to 12. And then here we have the y-axis, A through H. So it's set up for us. If I am in A, I want you to note that right here you have marks. Okay, let's say I'm in A. So across here is the A box. All right, and then here's the 1 box right here. And so I end up with kind of a artificially created grid right here. Same thing goes for all the rest of them. So let's say I was in, as an example, to show you how this works, if I wanted to find Incline Village and tell someone on the map where we're going to go to Incline Village right here in North Lake Tahoe, okay, I'm going to look and see. All right, I would normally use a ruler, but today we're using a piece of paper for a straight edge because, well, relatives of mine like taking my rulers. So anyway, let's take a look. If I'm looking, I'm going to use those artificial C lines right here. And so I'm looking there. I'm not in the C box. I'm actually in the D area from the looks of it. Okay, am I? No, I'm actually still in C, very tight to the C. It spreads the CD line. So here we go. I'm across here. Notice I'm taking the C, bottom of the C mark, okay, which is right here. Okay, bottom of the C mark, I'm going to run a line through it. And it's just as happenstance would have it, runs right through Incline Village. I'm going to run the top mark up here just to make sure that I have it. I would use a pencil, not a pen, but this is what I have available right now. I'm going to look down at the bottom or the top. I'm going to say inclines here. So I'm looking at number 4, number 5. So I'm going to say that's number 5 right here. Okay, I'm going to run this down. put a box right here. Okay, and then I'm going to take a look over here. There's the end of 5, so there's the mark. That's what I'm talking about when I say the end of the 5 mark right here. We come down right here, and I've created myself an artificial box, which falls in the C5 range, okay, for Incline Village right here. And even though Incline Village does split C and D. Okay, so in this section, we're going to talk about the scaling on a map. And when you look for scaling on a map, you're looking for 1 or 2 lines that look like this. The 2 lines here are one of miles and one of kilometers, given that varying places have varying distance measurements. You'll find it here on this National Geographic Road and Recreation Atlas. You've seen it before in my previous video. All right, this is within the map legend information over here. And then, of course, compass rose here. We know that going up is north on this map. Now, when we talk scaling, what we're talking about is representing smaller distances to show large distances. Example, on this map, 1 inch, it says it right here, equals 8.6 miles, or 1 centimeter equals 5.4 kilometers, however you choose to measure it. Now, the reason that they use this is, obviously, you can't measure 5,280 feet, which is an actual mile on a map, so they scale it down. And the way that you do that is you take a look and you say, okay, if 1 inch equals 8.6 miles, okay, what I need to do is figure out how far it is between Plymouth, right down here, okay, Plymouth, and say, let's call it the Historic Carey House Hotel. Let's say I want to get there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make 2 dots. That's how I do it myself. Here is my handy dandy ruler. Okay, I'm going to use inches because, well, we use inches here in the US. I'll go ahead and start measuring it. Okay, so I'm going to go down here. It's a rough estimate. Roughly 2 inches up there. So I'm going to say 1.5 to here. Okay, 1.5 inches to there. Another quarter, so 1 3/4 inches overall total, and then another 1/4 inch up there, which is equal a total of 2 inches. Now, 2 inches, if you multiply 8.6 miles, you're going to end up with 17.2 miles. So the distance between Plymouth and the Historic Carey House Hotel roughly is 17.2 miles based on the fact that I went ahead and measured it out, and the distance roughly between this point here all the way up here was right at about 2 inches. And so then what I do, 2 inches times 8.6 is going to give me 17.2 miles. And that, folks, in a nutshell, is how you look at scale. If you wanted to go from here at the Carey House, just outside of Placerville, all the way up to Lake Tahoe, you would measure that out completely with your ruler, calculate it, and you'd have a rough estimate of the distance. Now, I keep saying rough estimate because unless you can measure every tiny little piece on the map, which is hard to do with a rigid line, you're going to have some spots where there's a slight bit of margin for error. And so I use it as a rough estimator, which gives me the ability to kind of predict, all right, it's going to be roughly 17.2 miles. And I know when I'm running and I'm navigating off the map what I'm looking for. So I hope that helps with scaling. All right, this last section for the day we're going to talk about is the compass rose. Now, in my previous video, I've talked about the compass rose with cardinal directions, but it does bear repeating. On any map, and we were just looking at this map, this is the National Geographic Recreation and Road Atlas. Okay, I want to make sure that I know where the compass rose happens to be, which I identify as right here. Okay, compass rose points north. North is this direction on my map. So I know as I start walking, if I start hiking, I start riding, or I start driving, I am able to identify north on any map that I look at. Okay, I'm going to cover one last thing. I saved the best for last today. Okay, what we're looking at right now on my computer screen is what is known as Onyx Off-Road. It is a mapping system that is electronic. It is web-based and app-based, and I use it almost exclusively for all my off-road stuff, whether I'm on my adventure bike, I'm on my pickup, or I'm in the side-by-side. I have some device that runs it. So with that being said, one of the coolest features about having electronic maps is you can zoom them in. And so I'm going to show you real quick. I'm zooming this one in. We're going to cover topo lines for just a second. If I'm looking at topo lines, I can bring them in real tight so I can see them. Okay, now, one of the things about Onyx that's difficult to deal with sometimes is they don't list contour lines, interval lines, for the distance and tell you what the elevation change is. So there's a way you can kind of sneak around and figure it out. All right, so if we are looking right here, and we're looking at interval lines that are darker than the others, what that means is there's 5 of them in between. Okay, so every 5, they darken it so it's easy for you to find. What you're doing is, if you count the interval lines between the 2 dark components, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and those 5, when you look at it, you have 7,400 feet and 7,200 feet. That's a difference of 200 feet over 5 lines. All you do is divide. You take 200, which is the difference between 74 and 72, divide by 5, which is the amount of interval lines, and you get the magic number 40. 40 is a standard contour interval, but you always want to make sure because some of them are 50. So there you go. So the interval contour lines on Onyx, at least at this level, are at 40 feet. All right. When I'm looking at it, one of the coolest things about using this mapping software is the fact that I can actually rotate this. Okay, so I can look at it from a different perspective. I'm grabbing my mouse buttons, both of them, and I'm turning it. And you'll notice as I turn it, it also changes over here. It changes the compass rose. All I have to do with the compass rose is double click it, and it goes back to north straight up. So that's a cool feature. Another cool feature is when you click on these little 3 stacked looking things over here to the right, these are your layers. When you're looking at your layers, you can change things up. I can change it to a satellite high resolution. So there you go, that satellite imagery. I can change it to a hybrid, which has the topo and the imagery. Okay, I can also change it to the just topo lines right here. Okay, which is what we were looking at before, just topo or recent imagery. It takes satellite photos from when the satellites do the mapping and shows you. Okay, if I want to look at my legend, okay, I can come over here. I can move the box over here and take a look at my legend down here. Okay, I look at the count settings. I can go to the legend. Notice over here, I click that on, and I have a legend that tells me what the colors mean in the trails. It tells me the trail type. It gives different markings for what the trails are. And then it also talks about Bureau of Land Management. We've covered that before. Forest Service, open ride areas, and private land. It all covers it. Tells you what the colors mean. It's your symbol, just like we talked about in the last episode. But that is, in a nutshell, and a brief overview. I realize I went over it real quick. It talks about, doesn't talk, because it doesn't talk. I keep saying that in my videos. It actually does show you a ton of information. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. If this video was useful, please consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It does help the channel out. Plan smarter, travel farther. Create your next waypoint.